Okay, good evening, councillors and members of the public. I'm Councillor Wilby, Chairman of the Planning Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you to this meeting of the committee. May I take this opportunity to advise you that if there is a fire alarm, and it does sound, please remain seated, and members of the Democratic Service team will assess the situation and give further instruction on the evacuation of the building if necessary. Tonight's proceedings will be webcast by the council, but if anyone else intends to record these proceedings, can you please let me know now? I ask this question not to stop you, but merely to ensure that members of the public in the room know that this is taking place. Okay. Moving on to item 1 then. Are there any apologies for absence?
Sorry, Chairman. Yes, we've received apologies from Councillors Perry and Reardon.
Okay, thank you. Are there any substitute members?
Councillor Javinsky substituting for Councillor Perry.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, are there any visiting members? Can't see any. None. Item 4, any items withdrawn from the agenda? There are no items recommended for withdrawal from the agenda today, so we should move on. Date of the adjourned meeting, I'm hoping we don't need this, to be honest, will be the 24th of July, if required. Urgent items, you have quite a in-depth urgent item back. I do intend to take these and any verbal items from the officers. Councillor Summerfield.
Can I just check? There's 2 urgent updates for item 19. Is one after the other, or were they issued together?
I believe they issued together. Okay, moving on. Are there any disclosures by members and officers? See no one indicating. Should move on. Item 8, sorry. Are there any disclosures of lobbying? I'll look at the members individually clockwise to state if they've been.
Well, I was actually
Lobby.
reading the update, to be honest. Could you repeat the question?
Have you been lobbied, say?
Not that I have found, I'm afraid. Thank you.
No lobbying.
No lobbying.
Item 19, Chair.
No lobbying, Chair.
16, 17 and 19.
No lobbying.
Item 14, Mr. Chairman, in connection with my cabinet responsibilities.
14 and 19.
17.
I'm just going to say all. Okay. Moving on. Item 9. I move that the items of the agenda to be taken in public as proposed. Is that agreed? Thank you, councillors. I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 19th of June 2025 be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you, members. Okay. Item 11. There are no presentations this evening. Sessions even. The third item is I move to Rob Jarman, Head of Development Management, to provide an update on the third items.
Thanks, Chairman, and good evening, councillors. On the first deferred item, the George at Yalding, we've received 2 new applications, and the Parish Council have requested that both are discussed at the same planning committee. On the second deferred item, 4 Oaks, Churchill, Bolton and Chelsea, we're still waiting for additional information from the applicant. And then that's the same for the last one, although I've seen quite a lot of correspondence whereby the applicant is seeking clarification on exactly what detail is to be submitted. Thank you. Yeah, and it's probably best at this juncture, as you will have noticed on a couple of the reports tonight, there's reference to something called the tilted balance. And as you, well, like looking at all of you, I think you were all at full council last night, and I think it began to dominate to as the meeting wore on. So Maidstone's latest housing land supply figures are based on the financial year 2023 to 24. And that showed a 5.1 supply. However, in December 2024, a revised version of the NPPF came in, and that reintroduced a 5% buffer. Plus, this is where it gets more complicated. With the 23-24 data set, the 5th year is the highest step for Maidstone. That basically the inspector gave a period of grace in terms of supply. But for 23-24, obviously it's looking 5 years ahead. The final year is on that higher step. So the two to get, well, if you just take off the 5%, it drops Maidstone to below 5 years, and it drops a bit further because of this 5th year. I won't overcomplicate it. So what does that actually mean? So I've got the NPPF here. So for decision making, which is what you're doing tonight, this means approving development proposals that accord with an up-to-date development plan without delay, or, and this is the key point for Maidstone, D, where there are no relevant development plan policies, or the policies which are most important for determining the application are out of date, which is the case with the Maidstone finds itself in now. The NPPF requires local planning authorities to grant planning permission unless, Roman numeral 1, the application of policies in this framework that protect areas of assets of particular importance provides a strong reason for refusing the development proposed. Or I'll qualify that. So quite a lot to take in here. I appreciate it. So even though Maidstone doesn't have a 5-year land supply, there's certain what I call safeguarded areas that outweigh that tilted balance. So that's sites of special scientific interest, land in the green belt. Maidstone hasn't got much, just 2% around Nettlestead, but nevertheless, it does have some. Local green space, a national landscape, which obviously Maidstone does have, so that the tilted balance does not come into effect in the national landscape. National parks, which obviously Maidstone doesn't have. Heritage course, but another one for Maidstone is irreplaceable habitats. designated heritage assets, areas at risk of flooding, which obviously Maidstone does have quite a lot of, or coastal change, which Maidstone doesn't have. So with a tilted balance, it doesn't override everything. Okay. And secondly, any adverse impacts of doing so, i.e. permitted development, would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies in this framework taken as a whole. Having particular regard to key policies for directing development to sustainable locations, that's still in there. You can't have a few houses in a farmer's field in the middle of nowhere. Making effective use of land, obviously that's geared towards brownfield land. Securing well-designed places, so quality design is still there, and providing affordable homes. That's still a government priority, the provision of affordable homes, even with authorities that don't have a 5-year land supply, individually or in combination. Sorry, I appreciate that's a lot to take in, but I've just quoted from the NPPF. So tonight, you know, we can show that we have considered the tilted balance. Thank you.
Can I just confirm that everybody understands the briefing that we've just had? Yeah. No, unless. But well, I just need a clear indication of it that everybody understands it. Yes. I only take one question. One question.
Is it possible to get a list of the ones that you read out under points 1 and 2? Not now, but after tonight's committee.
They are all listed within the PPF.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Get a briefing notes and out. Yeah. So we will get a briefing note done, and it will cover this. As you're the member, Councillor Harwood.
No, it's just a clarification from Mr. Jarman's statement that he read out. And it is germane to this evening's agenda because of the location of some of the applications. And that's about local landscape designations, such as our local land areas of local landscape value. Does that fall within the local green space that is identified by the NPPF, or is it picked up in some other way, or does it have no bearing whatsoever?
It's not mentioned in the NPPF. This is where it gets very complicated, and there's been quite a lot of appeal cases here. Where the tilted balance kicks in is with local policies that restrict the supply of housing. So I think that a local designation, obviously outside of a national landscape or SSSI, I think that does restrict the supply of housing. It's yeah, this is where it becomes very complicated. For instance, even though it's not in the list I read out, because it's a general issue. For instance, I think I'm right in saying that if a developer said, right, I want to propose 10 houses next to Leeds Castle, the setting of Leeds Castle is still fundamental. So it still outweighs the tilted balance because it's such a fundamental of planning. But I think local designations, I think they would fall foul of the tilted balance, as in I think they would lose their teeth. Myself and Richard are in discussions with the external law firm that we use, and we are asking these kind of questions. You know, precisely which policies fall away.
Okay, back to the agenda then. I call upon Francis Amacour. One. For my item. The next item is item 19. Yeah, okay. To introduce the item.
Thank you, Chairman. Good evening, members. This application proposes a change of use from a shop to a 5-bedroom HMO, together with alterations to fenestrations. The application site itself is in the Maidstone urban area. The site lies approximately 1.7 kilometers from the town center. The application building itself is currently in use as a tattoo studio. The existing building has glazed shop front with white rendered external elevations. So the application building is now on your screen. That's the frontage of the building. The next building is the view of the application building looking west, showing the side elevation. And then the next slide is showing the rear elevation of the application building. So the works proposed to convert the building includes internal alterations, insertion of partition walls, and introduction of to introduce 5 bedrooms, a shared kitchen, dining space, and 2 shared bathrooms. These changes are shown on the proposed floor plans, which are now on your screen. So the green shaded areas depict the proposed bedrooms, and the area shaded white on this section is the 2 bathrooms that has been proposed. The proposal includes landscape front garden, which constitutes a visual improvement to the character of the local street scene. The use of a single family house for up to 6 occupants do not necessarily ordinarily require planning permission. In this case, permission is required because the existing building is in non-residential use. The proposal is acceptable in terms of neighbor amenity, standard of accommodation, visual amenity, impact upon parking, and wider highway network. The benefits of the scheme outweighs the harm when carrying out a planning balance. In addition to this, available information on the council's housing supply, which Rob made reference to a while ago, lends further weight to a positive recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we've got an objector, Mr. Gray.
Mr. Chair, councillors, my name is Stephen Gray, and I'm here today to express an objection to the proposed planning permission for 389 Tunbridge Road on behalf of Joanne Gray, current resident and owner at 387 next door. The primary concern revolves around the significant pressures on the already limited parking facilities. I note from the previous minutes that there was a objection from Councillor Harper for the lack of off-street parking. By the calculations he's put in, there should be 6 additional parking spaces required for the property. I have no idea how you intend to remedy that. However, there are multiple concerns. As you may be aware, the community is currently facing substantial parking challenges. The introduction of this new development will exacerbate these issues, leading to several negative consequences. The first of these will be increased traffic congestion. The additional vehicles associated with the new development will inevitably lead to more traffic congestion. be that from new residents or visitors to the property. This not only affects the flow of traffic, but also increases the risk of accidents and delays. This is especially pertinent as Tunbridge Road is a main thoroughfare into Maidstone for ambulances on emergency from Maidstone Hospital. The second concern are naturally safety concerns. Limited parking often forces residents and visitors to park in unsafe or illegal spots, especially a bus stop approximately 50 metres up from Joanne's house. This can obstruct visibility for drivers and pedestrians, increasing the likelihood of accidents and again pertinent to the emergency vehicles. The third consequence is impact on local businesses. There are quite a few local businesses that rely on the availability of parking for their customers. The increased competition for these spaces could deter potential customers, negatively impacting the small local economy. The fourth consequence is quality of life. The struggle to find parking can cause significant stress and frustration for residents. It can also lead to disputes among neighbours, affecting the overall harmony of the community. And the final consequence is environmental impact. Increased traffic and congestion contribute to higher levels of pollution and noise, which can have adverse effects on the health and well-being of residents, many of whom are children attending local schools. As you may know, and is available on record, evidence of which can be provided if you require. There are numerous occasions where Ms Gray has had to report the bins and refuse sacks of the neighbours' current HMO residents being left out for days on end and blocking her driveway. Interestingly, the first photo you showed exactly where they start, but not where they finish. Moreover, Ms Gray has had to report rubbish being left out for days, resulting in pests and rodents feeding on said rubbish, to the point where the local council informed her that they were going to issue a Section 46 notice to the residents. Ms Gray has also had to contend with the duvet covered in faecal waste being left on her drive, which ended up with the landlord, Amat UK, sending a member of staff to clear it away. It is Ms Gray's assertion that further residents similar to those that she's experienced thus far will exacerbate these issues. Considering these concerns, we urge the council to reconsider the planning permission for this development. It's crucial that the council prioritise the needs and well-being of the existing community members and address the other issues before introducing new developments. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Ms Gray. I now have a statement to be read out by Councillor Faye Gooch on behalf for the Fen and Oakwood ward members.
Apologise for not being at the meeting tonight, but we all have long-standing commitments and only a few days' notice that this item was coming. We oppose the application for the reasons Councillor Harper called it into the Planning Committee. There are significant concerns on parking. For a 5-roomed HMO, as stated in paragraph 6.24, there is no off-street parking. This property is one of the busiest, if not the busiest roads in Maidstone. During the morning and afternoon rush hour, traffic is frequently backing up along the road beyond this property, heading east and west along Tunbridge Road, where are the 5 cars plus going to park. There is no space on Tunbridge Road. For this reason, this should not be permitted. More concerningly is that the report is full of errors. As chair of the Planning and Healthier Stronger Communities PAC, a couple of weeks ago, we approved the HMO SPD with the proviso of a 6-monthly review. Fenton Oakwood is listed as having 129 HMOs. This number has already increased due to further HMOs being established since that document was prepared. Council and especially planning decisions need to be based on correct quality information, not incorrect information. The original map in the report was wrong, and unfortunately the urgent update map, it is also wrong. It shows 1 HMO on Tunbridge Road and 2 on Fant Lane. However, if you look at the map at Appendix 2B of the HMO SPD in the same area, there are 9 HMOs. There are 3 HMOs on Tunbridge Road within a 100-metre radius of the application. However, even that data is not completely accurate. In the stretch of Tunbridge Road where this site is located, there are 6 HMOs and 2 in Western Road at junction with Tunbridge Road. To date, we've not been able to get a full list of all the HMOs in our ward, despite numerous attempts, and the data the council uses is inconsistent. How then is the SPD to be applied, when the planning department clearly does not have accurate and full database? So in reality, on your new map, there are not 3, but at least 13 errors, an error rate of over 400%. With such inaccuracies in the report, it would be a miscarriage of justice for you to approve this tonight. At the very least, it should be delayed for correct information to be provided. This is the first time the HMO-SPD has been referred to. Given the level of errors in the report, neither us as ward councillors nor the residents of Banton Oakwood can have much confidence when the council cannot even use the data it holds properly. Please reject or defer this application because it is based on inaccurate data. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Gooch. Okay, I just want to ensure that every member's had a chance to read the updates. Yeah, okay. Does anyone wishing to speak? Councillor Summersgill.
Can I just seek clarification? This is an HMO on the ground floor and there's already one on the first floor. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And how many does the first floor one, how many occupants does that have?
Yeah, from the evidence we have on our system, it's 5 bedrooms on the first floor. And then the current one is proposing additional 5 bedrooms.
And can I just check then, even though they are 2 separate HMOs, so they don't have to be licensed as 10 because it's one building, or these are licensed as 2, 5?
No, they don't have to be licensed. Thanks.
Okay. Councillor.
It's sort of following on from Councillor Summerskill. So is the owner or the person who runs the top floor the same person who's going to do the bottom floor? Because if it's the same people running it, surely it will need to be licensed. That's my query, and I leave it up to the experts to give me an answer. But in my logical mind, that sort of changes the dynamics.
I've just been informed that they don't. So they are considered as 2 separate dwellings. Even if they are owned by the same person, they are considered 2 separate dwellings. Okay. Councillor Drabinski.
Thank you, Chair. Could we go back to the picture of the front of it? I'd just like to see that again, if we could. As far as the 2, how can you have in one building 2 separate? I mean, surely a way to get around it would be just divide the building, any HMO building, into 4, so you didn't have to license anything at all ever. You know, if you see what I'm saying. So if it's one building, surely it must need licensing as 10, not 5. Otherwise, you could just take any building and divide it into however many pieces you want to avoid having it licensed.
So that is for licensing to debate, not the planning committee to debate. We are debating the planning application of the shop front being removed and the application for 5 HMOs, the 5-bedroom HMO, which I believe, if I'm correct, it could be done on a permitted development as it stands. The plan of mission really refers around the front and removing the shop front to go with it. So, Councillor Peter, you want to come back?
Yeah, another one of my stupid questions. Sorry, if I was paying attention correctly, are we saying that hard standing's going and they're going to make it into a garden? Right, okay. Which, if anyone who's moving in there does have a car, then I would concur with Councillor Harper. That is a very dangerous stretch of road.
I'm not disagreeing that it's a very busy stretch of road, Councillor Cleaver. Obviously.
The word I used was dangerous. There's a slight difference.
Well, I don't think the data actually supports that, but anybody else want to come in? Councillor Harper, Councillor Harwood.
What? Yeah. Yeah. However, I'll skate over that. Yeah, I think my concern here, we understand that the issue, it's not really an HMO application actually, because it's permitted development. It's about a change of the frontage and a reinstatement of a domestic boundary. So it will be like all the properties to the west, which I think is positive. However, like my colleagues, I am a little bit concerned about the intricacies of this. It reminds me of when we used to have a threshold of 14 units for providing Section 106 and affordable housing. And we used to get the subdivision of fields, which was obviously the same developer, but created shell companies for each 14 to get around it. And we have now, albeit the policy is not signed off, so we're a little bit ahead of ourselves. It's got to go to cabinet and so on, but it has a little bit of weight now to enable some tougher conditions than perhaps we can get. There's probably nothing we can do about it now, but I think we do need to consider how we prevent this happening again, because I understand the difference between licensing and a planning application, but essentially this is a 10-bedroom HMO, so it should tick the boxes. I don't really buy it that we've got kind of different people running different parts of the building, and I don't think it matters too much yet, because we haven't crossed the line with the SPD, but it will matter, and I don't want it to happen again, really.
Sorry. Yeah, I did take your point. So I think the application was validated in February this year. So in effect, I think the consequence is as you outlined, i.e. if it's permitted tonight, it becomes a 10-bedroom HMO. But in the description, it only affects the ground floor, even though it's the same building. So we, at the validation stage and the determination of this application, have treated the same building as two separate planning units, if that makes sense. Even though in reality, it will become a 10-bedroom HMO. I think what's happened is that at the validation stage, it's a 5-bedroom HMO at first floor level, obviously without the shop frontage. That's permitted development, so that's been put to one side. And then a new chapter has been created, as in they needed planning permission on the ground floor, like the chairman said, simply because there's a shop window there. However, the obvious consequence of that is in effect, it will become a 10-bedroom HMO. But because of the way we've accepted this description, we've accepted that, dare I say it, way around things.
I think my concern, if I may come back, is that this doesn't happen again ever. And we, because the SPD doesn't have very much weight, and because where this was submitted, it doesn't make that much difference. But we cannot really have this circumnavigation of our policy, because otherwise we will, other people will take the same approach.
Sorry to come back. I've been told that this building does have two separate entrances. Although my main point is that we have treated the building as two separate planning units.
But I think the feeling I'm getting, and to be truth, I agree about the fact that two different entrances, so it should probably be treated as two separate places. It could be owned by two different people applying. However, we don't have that information tonight. Is that correct? So I'm just going to, rather than us carry on debating this, just propose we defer it. We find out about the ownership, and we find out if it does hit the 10 HMO. Yeah. So councillor Harwood.
Yeah, if I may come back, I think it's a little bit more than gaining clarity on ownership. It is the fact that this effectively, with an additional 5 bedrooms onto 5 that are already there, is a 10-bedroom HMO. It therefore triggers, albeit they don't have a lot of weight, certain safeguards because of the impact of larger HMOs. Therefore, you know, I'm sorry, but I do need to, but if you are the neighbour, you are the neighbour to a 10-bedroom HMO, regardless of if the bottom floor is a different company to the top floor. It's still a building that's a 10-bedroom HMO. And I think it's really, really important that in policy terms, we absolutely crack this.
Like I slightly have to, I think I disagree with you on that. Because that's effectively saying you've got 2 houses owned by the same people, side by side, it's the same kind of calculation that goes with it. I think if it's owned by 2 separate people, that has a different impact. It's got 2 separate entrances to the premises on both the first floor and the ground floor. They are effectively 2 separate applications. However, I believe if they are owned by the same owner, your ground stands. I think we should, rather than go around in circles and debate it, I'm just going to move to we defer it, because I think we could spend all night on the HMOs, which we have done in the past, and get the information that we've already asked for. Councillor Harwood.
At this point, I've just a question to the officers. Does it make any difference? Because at the moment, we're talking about essentially an improvement, a changing the frontage, putting the domestic boundary back in. So effectively, even if this were a 10-bedroom HMO, actually, what difference does it make? That's just the question I ask, because I can see the learning point. What I don't quite understand is, you know, how it's going to make a lot of difference.
Yeah, what is before you tonight is as per the description, and that is a 5-bedroom HMO and taking out the shop front at ground floor level only. Nothing to do with the upstairs.
So it's up to councillors whether we wish to discuss it on the item on the paper, or are we saying this is a 10 HMO, 10-bedroom HMO, and if so, we need to defer it and actually go back to actually assess it as that. Okay, Councillor Spooner. Sorry. Okay, Councillor Cleaver.
So, well, I move we defer it then, because we're going round in circles with what ifs and maybes, to be quite honest. And my concern is, if we don't get this right, we've opened up the door. I mean, for all I know, Mr. Bloggs may open the top and Mrs. Bloggs may own the bottom. It's a way of getting round things. So I move we defer it till we get that information we need.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I can just clarify, or perhaps the officers can clarify in my own mind the situation here. As I see it, we have 2 separate planning units in one building, an upstairs and a downstairs. The upstairs has been converted into a 5-bed HMO under permitted development rights probably years ago. The bottom has been used as a shop for many years. The applicant could apply to convert that into a house, which he would probably get permission for. Single family, 3-bedroom, 4-bedroom house, he'd get permission. A few months later, he could then convert it into a 5-bed HMO under PD rights, which would all be quite lawful. So all we are arguing about and talking about tonight is changing the shop front, which will be a improvement, breaking up the forecourt or the hardened or the surface drive, and bringing in some environmental improvements. I mean, to my way of thinking, this is something we should be supporting. I mean, I'm quite happy to move we approve this in accord with the officer's recommendation.
Okay, in that case, I'm going to quickly go to the vote on that then. And actually, I've got a proposer, I've got a seconder, unless I've got any amendment to it. I'm going to move to the vote. So, done on the amendment. Okay, all in favour? Those against? One against. Those abstaining. Okay, that is approved. Oh.
You can't alter the law, basically. What says he can do it?
Okay. Thank you for that. We now have to vote on the main amendment. Oh, sorry, I forgot. Sorry, Councillor Cleaver, that you'd actually second my deferral. So we now have to vote on that again. Okay. So all in favour of approval as per the papers. All in favour of approval as per the papers, because I proposed the deferral and you seconded it. That was amendment to our proposal. So we have to vote on it again, don't we? I know it's a bit. So all those in favour? Approval as per the papers. Seven, 4. Those against? 3 against. Those abstaining? 1 abstain. That is approved. 2 abstaining, sorry. That is approved. Thank you, councillors. Moving on then. We have a theme tonight. I move to the officer to please introduce the item.
Thank you, Chairman. This application involves construction of a 4-story building comprising of a 10-bedroom HMO with associated bin and bike storage. The application site itself is in Maidstone Town Centre. The image on your screen now is an area view of the application site. The next image is view of the site from Union Street. This current image is viewed towards the rear of number 74 Wick Street, looking west. And this image is the application site and heritage assets in the vicinity of the site. So there is the Holy Trinity Conservation Area, and then the Maidstone Central Conservation Area is further ahead. There are also a few listed buildings in the vicinity of the application site. The current image on your screen is the previously approved scheme for the site. This last image is the current application. The dimensions of the buildings are the building is the same as the previously approved building for the site. So in terms of the site history, the council granted permission in 2003 for a 4-story building comprising of 5 one-bedroom flats and 1 2-bedroom flats. A further permission was granted in 2004 for a 4-story building comprising a 10-bedroom HMO, which I just showed on your screen. These earlier permissions are unimplemented and still remain extant. The building that is now proposed is identical to the previously approved development for the site. The reason for a referral to members today is due to opposing views from from the conservation officers. So when the original application was submitted, the conservation officer was consulted and was happy with the scheme. The current scheme was submitted and the current conservation officer was consulted, and she was not too keen on the design. So that is the reason why the head of development requested that the application is determined by members today. So the scheme provides residential accommodation in a sustainable location where future occupiers do not have to rely on private car for their daily needs. The scale, height, design, plot coverage is in keeping with the local character and appearance. The standard of accommodation and neighbor impacts are acceptable. The proposal is acceptable in relation to highway safety access and parking. No harm is identified to the heritage significance of the Holy Trinity Conservation Area and the Maidstone Central Conservation Area and nearby listed building. No harm is identified to the heritage significance of the locally listed building, which is to the front of the application site. The benefits of the scheme outweigh the harm when carrying out a planning balance. No reasons are found that would provide adequate justification for going against the earlier decisions back in 2003 and 2004. Moreover, available information on the council's housing supply position lends further weight to a positive recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Ms. St. Pierre, the applicant.
Hi, thank you. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. My name is Danielle. I'm the Director for Hybrid Planning and Development, and we're the agent for the planning application. As was set out by officers, there are two extant and could be implemented planning permissions that already exist on this site. The first one was a 4-storey building comprising 5 flats, and then the second was a Part 3, Part 4-storey building comprising a 10-bedroom HMO. The latter was approved and it had some incorrect information and incorrect drawings associated with it, hence the reason we've now needed to make another planning application and come back to you guys this evening. The application mirrors what was found to be acceptable and what was approved under the previous permission, and specifically it responds to feedback from your HMO licence colleagues, because this will be a scheme that receives a HMO licence, where they asked us to add an additional kitchen into the proposal to provide additional kitchen facilities and communal eating space for the residents of the building. We listened to that feedback, we added that additional kitchen in, and therefore this responds to that. The reason we've been brought to planning committee as opposed to having a delegated powers approval as we did on the previous 2 applications is because there was quite an unexpected objection that was raised from the new conservation officer. The objection focused primarily on the subdivision of some of these historic plots, while she does note that there are a number of the other plots adjacent that have also been subdivided. So respectfully, we're struggling to see the heritage harm that's been created as part of this proposal, particularly in light of those 2 previous planning permissions that already exist and could be implemented on site tomorrow if we needed them to be. The site's within the town centre. It's less than 5 minutes from the station, and we've included biodiversity net gain, ecology enhancements, carbon reduction technologies, including air source heat pumps, and dedicated cycle parking as well. As mentioned earlier, we've liaised very closely with your HMO licence colleagues to ensure that the scheme is licensable and it provides the top quality facilities for HMOs in the town centre. So respectfully, we would ask for you to follow officer's recommendation and to approve the application this evening. Thanks again for your time.
Okay, thank you. Just before I bring Councillor Cleater and somebody in, I just want clarification from the officer about what because we've heard it referenced by the speaker there, about what the conservation officer came back. Can you just clarify what were their main issues, please, Francis?
In terms of the heritage comments received from the conservation officer, I think it's worthwhile going back to review the previous conservation officer comment. The original building was meant to be a 5-storey building, and he objected on grounds that there will be harm to the setting and heritage importance of the conservation area. So the building was then reduced to a 4-storey, which he found acceptable. The current conservation officer looked at the same scheme, and then her comments relate mainly to the height and bulk of the building, and also the plot coverage of the site. She was also concerned about the loss of the baggage plot. In the officer committee report, we have addressed all those concerns and found that the harm identified is outweighed by the benefits of the proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Francis. Councillor Cleater.
Yeah, can you go to the one that shows the frontage of it, please? Is this the bit in between the old C&H Fabrics, Burger King? Because part of that, the gated bit, is obviously the car park and where Burger King put all their bins. So how will people access the HMO? Is it going through that gap? Because the only reason I'm asking is I used to work in some flats further up Union Street in Terry's Court, and because of the narrowness of the gap, they all had to have sprinklers on because a fire engine couldn't get down. So that's all I'm querying, the access to it for those reasons.
Thank you for the question. The width of the access that runs along that building shown in your picture is just above 1 meter. And we consider that it's sufficient for use by occupants of the building, future occupants of the building.
So just a supplementary question then. Where are Burger King going to store all their bins? Only because if you're saying it's that gated gap, then I understand that's wide enough. But at the moment, Burger King use that for storing all their bins, etc., and everything. If it's the little narrow gap, then obviously clearly it's going to have sprinklers. That's my concern at the moment, is safety on that, and just some clarification. Because if all of that's going to be used as the entrance to the property, then we've got other issues with Burger King. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. To clarify, the access to the site, it's not the gated entrance where Burger King parks their bins. Is the narrow lane between that site and the building, the rendered building on the other side of the narrow lane.
So it is the alley.
What?
Is the alleyway.
The alleyway.
Yeah.
So, sorry, I didn't read the previous, I wasn't involved in the previous one. So I'm taking it that this building will need sprinklers then because of fire brigade access, because that was the restrictions that was put on when Terry's Court was built and their flats.
I'll wait for the officers to, obviously the fire department will do a review and they will do their recommendations to go with it. Councillor Cleater, obviously that's something that would come in underneath building regs rather than actually planning side. I know Councillor Harper actually in the past has been quite on about this within HMOs, for example. Have you got any other questions?
No, I just don't like to see people burn to death in flats, that's all. Having been in a fire myself. So.
Councillor Summerskill.
Just for clarification, at the beginning and the end of the officer's presentation, he said 2003 and 2004, both times, but the document suggests that the permissions were 2023 and 2024. Are they that old or is it recent?
Thank you, Councillor. I think you are referring to the right dates, 2023 and 2024. So all two permissions are still extant.
Okay, Councillor Thompson.
I came here from biology teaching. I'm puzzled on page 80 at item 11. I think I do know what a 10-bedroom HMO is. I'm not entirely sure that I understand how this works. The development hereby approved shall have no more than 10 separate occupants living in the building at the same time. How does that work?
Sorry, Councillor, can you just say that question? I don't think everyone caught actually what you're trying to ask.
How is it regulated that there is only one person per property?
So when the application is submitted, we normally consult the council's housing standards team. So they have commented on all the schemes and they found it acceptable. They made recommendations for changes to the communal area and the kitchen, which have been implemented in this current scheme. So from the planning point of view, we have no concerns about it. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Councillor, I take it you're trying to say, how do we enforce the fact that only one person lives in it?
How does it not come to be a 20-person HMO?
I think that could be a question about any HMO, to be honest, Councillor Thompson. That is and not to be horrible, but that is a licensing thing, I believe. But...
So does statement 11 have any force at all?
Yeah, it does, but as I understand it, what you're asking, Councillor Thompson, is what's the likelihood of us in monitoring and enforcing if there's 11 people there? And one of the tests is of a condition. One of the 6 tests is enforceability. I think the main one is that, you know, the bedroom sizes are what the bedroom sizes are. So personally, I think we should just rely on that.
It's a no, but obviously I'm assuming you went to university and you were in single-person digs, and I'm probably guessing that they weren't always single.
Jeff Goldblum, Jurassic Park, nature always finds a way.
Councillor Nagy.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, just very quickly, the speaker mentioned that there were plans to put into place biodiversity net gain plans on the site, but according to 6.8, it says the site was exempt, and I can't see any further mention of any plans on there. I was just wondering if there was any further information on that at all.
Francis?
Thank you for the question. There is an ecology condition which requires the applicant to submit details of ecology for the site. So once those details are submitted, we would consult KCC Ecology to confirm whether they are happy with them. If they are, then we would approve those that condition. Thank you.
Okay, so just to confirm that, Councillor Nagy, that's enhancements, not gain, because obviously the site itself doesn't actually hold a lot. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. On a philosophical point, I think the 2023 permission, it essentially, it leaves us with very little room for manoeuvre, regardless of, you know, now having an SPD and everything. It was approved under delegated powers. Clearly, it's something we never saw. I mean, frankly, I think that Maidstone town centre is urban crammed beyond what even other Kent towns are. We have lost the gaps between buildings. You know, before they built Fremlin Walk, there were back gardens and all those pargeted houses in Week Street. You could go down a little green alley and it would go into this secret garden. It's all been lost. The area around the Albion, again, some garden areas and things there, trees, all been lost. And when you look at the aerial photograph of Maidstone Town Centre, it's a roofscape. It's a solid blob. And it's not happened elsewhere. And I wonder why Maidstone has allowed it to happen. It's a policy issue, clearly, that you've seen in particularly this Week Street area that you've not seen elsewhere. And that leads to problems on things like HMOs, because there is nowhere to hang some washing out. There is nowhere to go out and have a fag. So any of those issues will take place in the street. And that is what's happening in Maidstone, is that it's becoming more and more a residential setting and less a retail and some of those other historic uses around leisure and so on. and they don't necessarily mix very well. And so I am concerned that you're going to have a number of individuals here with no space at all. And you know, hopefully in future, we won't have a 23 permission. We won't have, we will have an SPD, and we'll be able to drive better accommodation. But I just wanted to flag that I'm not happy about really the circumstances that led us to where we are with the very little room for manoeuvre. On the point that my colleague raised on biodiversity, it's an important one actually, because currently, as I pointed out, there is a ragstone wall that just runs between the White House and the back of what was C&H Fabrics. And that is an old wall, and it's clearly an old wall. It's covered in a plant called pellitory of the wall that's growing out of it. There's black spleen work. It's got all the things that live in old limestone walls. It's going to go, and we're going to lose that. On the back, round the corner from what was the back wing of C&H Fabrics, it's all ivy, all along those walls, all around everywhere. And you see, I think it's a picture which shows the green shed that was removed. That shows how much ivy there is. And that's the kind of area where you get bats living and things like that. But that's all going to be lost. I mean, I would suggest that actually, if you measured the faces of those walls, it would probably come to 25 square metres. However, I understand a calculation has been made by the planners, and it's been determined that it's not triggered a requirement for local biodiversity net gain. But what we do have is policy requiring the enhancements. One of the things from a biodiversity perspective that Union Street has, that not many other towns have, is an active colony of swifts. And you hear them and you see them particularly over the front of the churchyard, just a little bit up the road. And I cannot currently access what the enhancements are. So I would just like perhaps the officers to tell me what are the biodiversity enhancements, because if it's going to be something irrelevant to what lives there, then I don't think a bat tube or something is going to do a lot of good there. But if it were Swift bricks on the front, it would work. But I just need to know.
Thank you, Councillor Howard. I want to first make reference to your concerns regarding retention of the ragstone wall. Looking at condition 9, we have recommended the applicant, we have requested the applicant to submit details that includes retention of the ragstone boundary wall adjacent to the pedestrian access. So this wall would be retained as part of the development. In terms of the biodiversity issues that you raised, this is an issue that is very high on our agenda as a council, and it's an issue that the head of development management reminds us of that we should include in every application. In this case, we have included a standard condition requiring details of biodiversity for the site to be submitted. I also heard the agent mention some of these details. We're also open to, if the other thing that members want us to add to it, this condition can be amended to achieve that. Thank you.
I think on that,
yeah. So just bring Mr. Timms in, please.
Yes, so condition 5 actually refers to details that have already been approved, the enhancements, because it was done under the last application. So, and I've got the document here. So we approved an integrated bat box into the new building, 1 swift nesting box under the eaves, 2 insect nest boxes, 2 new hedgehog pathways. So if you don't consider that's appropriate or you want something else, then we would need to amend condition 5 for alternative details to be submitted.
But with respect, coming back, the entire site is effectively being filled with building. So how are you going to have a hedgehog highway through it? I think that's a policy taken from it could be in a garden in Staplehurst, which is being superimposed on 100% built out site. So I think we need to look at what we get there, and what we get in that area is Swift. So therefore, can we have Swift bricks?
Okay, Councillor Harwood. I agree with you. I think, to tell you the truth, to make it clear and clarification, how many Swift bricks are we asking for? Because I think obviously, if we just say Swift bricks, they could put 2 in because it deals with the narrative. Are you saying 5 Swift bricks, 7, 8? I don't know. I am looking for clarification.
I think it's the maximum number that can technically be fitted in, so they'll be used, because you don't want to put it so they'll cook themselves on a south facing wall. But so I think within the usages, because I'm just thinking there is not really a northern edge, but because it's linked to another building. So I think technically you're going to need to look at where on that building in the eaves you can put Swift bricks and make them work, and the maximum number I would suggest.
Just proposing, are we proposing that we give officers delegated powers to change it to Swift bricks and get the maximum number of Swift bricks possible for that development? Does anyone else wish to speak? No. So on the grounds of that, then I'm going to move as per the papers with the amendment to condition 5. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Thompson. All in favour? Unanimous. As approved, as per the amendment to condition number 5. Thank you, members. Okay. So item 18, please note that this is one of ours. I call upon Paul Higley, the landscape officer, to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chairman. Moving on from HMOs to TPOs. In front of you tonight is a tree application made by Maidstone Borough Council. It is to prune 3 trees to the front of St Francis Close or to the south of Heathfield Road, as shown on the aerial photograph within the papers. There's a bit more of a black and white plan for you to show roughly where the trees are. They all form part of TPO 1 of 2000, which protects most of the trees along the frontage or the south side of the road there. The first tree to be pruned is a horse chestnut. Again, these photos are in the papers, so people, obviously members can see these are just replicas for you to see. Again, this is the horse chestnut. Then you've got the oak tree along the frontage too, which is quite a prominent tree. And the last tree is a lime, which is not so prominent, but again, quite a structure on the side of the road there. The works proposed to these 3 trees is the crown lift to give a ground clearance of 3.5 metres. And when I mean crown lift, it's the removal of lower branches to achieve a height of 3.5 metres to clear the public highway and footpath. Again, this is standard work, all acceptable. So therefore, it's recommended that it's approved subject to the conditions and informatives in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Councillor Harwood.
Thank you, Chairman. I think I was responsible for getting the TPO for what used to be a really thick tree belt along Heathfield Road here. And this used to be the playing field for St Francis Primary School. And it was a woodland belt ran all along there. Subsequently, obviously the development was built, St Francis Close was built. But there has been a kind of death by 1,000 cuts to where you've got to what you've got now, where there are very few trees left. And what you see through, I mean, there have been attempts to plant trees in the gaps and so on to try and fill it out a bit and create the screen that was once there. But I would just like it, perhaps if Mr. Higley could come back, because the crown lifting would remove the screen, and the reason the residents in the established houses on the north side of the road were very keen to maintain the woodland screen apart from anything else, and it opens the view up. And I'm just wondering, what is the thinking behind the crown lifting, and what about this issue around the degeneration over a couple of decades now of going from what was quite a thick screen to now a very open group of trees. Thank you.
The crown lifting is proposed to clear generally the footpath and the highway, because as you know, this group of trees sits between the south side of Heathfield Road and a roadway that leads to the properties of St Francis Close. So it's kind of wedged in between two roads either side. These photographs probably don't do, obviously they're taken a little while ago prior to leaf coming out, but actually behind this line is a number of other shrubs and foliage. So the crown lifting that's proposed to clear, for argument's sake, this particular lime tree, revolves around the branches over St Francis Close signpost there. I mean, if you go up there, the branches are literally on your head. So you have to step out into the road to walk along the footpath. The crown lifting itself is to achieve the ground clearance above the highway and the footpath, which is statutory and required under the Highways Act anyway. But the other trees, I'll go back. This oak is obviously quite large. This is obviously lower foliage here, which is kind of more shrubs and self-seeded trees. The crown raising of this oak in particular to achieve the ground clearance would probably require just the pruning of this. There's a low branch here, you can't really see it, but there is a very low branch here that goes over the road behind this load of foliage. So again, it would just require the lifting or just the trimming off of this lower branch just to achieve the height clearance. Again, it's not the whole foliage, lower foliage, it's just specific branches that are lower than 3.5 metres. So you would still achieve and you would still get that level of screening that's there at the moment. In terms of the thinning of that foliage, obviously that's something out of our control in terms of planning, but it's something perhaps I could go back to Parks with and see if there's something they can do in terms of perhaps beefing up that area, because obviously they manage it and we don't, but obviously they only come to us when they want to do works to the trees. So I don't know what management they have in terms of how they're managing the site in terms of the screening value.
If I may come back, the lower vegetation you can see, that was yew that was deliberately planted in there because it's evergreen and thick and it stopped the headlights shining into the houses opposite and so on. So I think my one concern here is that we don't throw the yew baby out with the oak bathwater, if you like, when they go, you know, what quite often happens with contractors is they go in and they slash and burn. So we've got a nice, clean job. Whereas I think perhaps, I don't know if it's an informative or something, just that maintaining the screen is important for local residents. So therefore care should be taken that we don't have collateral damage of the yew and other low growing vegetation.
Yes, if you look at informative 1 on the papers, it says any adjacent trees should be protected from damage during the course of the tree works hereby allowed or permitted in accordance with the current edition of BS 3998. So basically the informative informs the person or the applicant that any works to the trees doesn't damage any other trees on the site that are not subject to the application. Yeah, do that, Councillor Harwood.
We'll wait and see, won't we?
Okay, Councillor Summersgill, you wish to speak?
Oh yeah, I just wondered what the red dot in the road was on the plan showing the TPO coverage, presumably not a tree trunk. On the G3 one on the plan.
So Paul, can you clarify that? The red dot on the coloured GIS plan, I believe, is an address point. So it's a point that's used on the GIS that we can click on to give the address of that particular street, record, road, house, etc. I believe. Just been confirmed that is the case. Okay. Any other questions or anyone wish to speak? In that case, I'm going to move as per the papers then. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Thompson, all in favour? That's 11-4. Those against? Those abstaining, one abstaining. As approved as per the papers. Okay. Thank you. Moving on to item 14. I call upon Richard Timms to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this is an application for a change of use of a former office building to a school for children with special education needs. The school and the applicant currently operate at the Hop Farm site in Paddock Wood under a temporary planning permission, but is looking to expand and find a permanent site. So this is the site location plan, site outlined in red. Highlighted yellow is the existing building. And as you can see, and if you're familiar with the area, it's next to the Yalding Enterprise Park, which is currently under development. So a number of buildings there and a flood conveyance channel. And this is Hampstead Lane to the north, and that's west of Yalding. And this is the layout plan. So again, the existing building here, some fairly minor changes are proposed to the building itself. And then a new car park here and a play area on the left side and landscaping around the outside. And there's just a few photos of the existing building, obviously not in a great condition at the moment. So just touch on a couple of key issues briefly. The proposals are a departure from the local plan. That's because the building falls within a wider allocation for employment. However, there are three main reasons why we consider the proposal is acceptable. Firstly, the ongoing need for special education needs school places, and the proposal would provide a permanent site for an existing school, but also allow expansion to provide more pupil places. Secondly, the national requirement to give great weight to schools and schools development. And thirdly, the school would still provide relatively good levels of employment from the staff members and obviously make use of a vacant building. And those issues are considered enough to outweigh the conflict with the employment policy. And then secondly, obviously flood risk, big issue. It's in a high risk area, which we know floods quite severely. However, the applicant has provided evidence, which has been agreed by the Environment Agency, that in the worst case scenario, flood water would take around 15 hours to reach the exit point here from the site. And therefore, if the school was in use and flooding did start, there'd be sufficient time to leave the site via Hampstead Lane to the west. On that basis, we consider the level of flood risk is acceptable, but it's subject to an evacuation plan, which has been submitted, but we think needs further details and signing up to the EA flood warning service. There are other issues which are in the report, but permission is recommended, and there are some changes under the urgent update, changes to conditions. I would want to recommend that we add a condition that requires written evidence that the school is signed up to the warning service. It's covered in the evacuation plan, but I think we need written evidence that it's signed up. So I would recommend that condition is added. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Miss Martin for the applicant, please.
Good evening, Chair, councillors. My name is Anne Martin and I'm a founding member of Quest School, which was established in 2003. I was the head teacher there for 20 plus years up until last July, and I now sit on the Board of Management. Today, and what sits before you, is a landmark moment for Quest, which should secure our business for the foreseeable future. For those who don't know us, Quest is an independent special needs school currently employing 37 staff. We have an Ofsted rating of outstanding, which we've maintained since 2012. We offer an important role within the Kent education sector by providing specialist education for pupils who are very severely impacted by autism and learning disabilities. Pupils are placed and funded by the local authorities, and typically they are students for whom it has been very difficult to find an educational setting. At the heart of our operations is our staff, who are specialists within the sector. They are well qualified, and all staff undertake extensive training upon joining the school. Whilst we have operated sufficiently well at our current premises, we are now at a turning point. We require premises that can cater for modern operational demands and allow us to grow, making our provision available for an increased number of pupils. The premises at Yalding offers us this opportunity. So why this location? Honestly, we've been searching for the right premises for over 10 years, and the nature of our requirements are severely constrained by, first of all, location and the need to remain within an area to retain our existing pupils and staff. As well as that, our operational requirements, space for floor space, internal and external play areas and parking, as well as affordability. The site at Yalding has been known for various historical risks in relation to flooding and contamination. The health and safety of our pupils is of paramount importance, and we would not entertain a proposal that we could not adequately manage. In terms of flooding, we've been operating on our Hop Farm site in excess of 10 years, which sits in flood zone 3. We have robust flood risk assessments and management systems with which all our staff are trained and familiar. The other point, contamination. We know there has been extensive remediation on this site, which is very well documented and signed off by the council. As is the nature of our operations, to ensure the safety of our pupils and staff, we cannot have soft landscaping or loose impediments which could be ingested by our pupils or used as projectiles. The site will therefore comprise of hard or artificial surfaces which would mitigate any risk to our pupils. We trust that the committee will approve this application tonight, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Summerskill, as it's your patch.
Yes, thank you. Also, ward as the ward councillor. I think there's general support for the school purpose, and although adjacent parish has objected, I think the officers have dealt with most of those in the report. My concern I have is purely on surface water aspects of this. Looking at the previous drainage strategy and approval, which was in 2022, it was for a different layout of car parking, which was all to be permeable. We now have a substantial proportion of that with an impermeable AstroTurf wet pour section, which will shift water into the permeable parking area. I'm not sure that taking out the condition 5 and 13 as the urgent update has suggested actually deals with the actual situation there. I would be quite concerned to have the surface water drainage system implemented either as the previous approval, which was approved by Kent Drainage, or some sort of written verification that there is permeability of sufficient down into the ground surface underneath from the what will now not be permeable areas, the soft play areas.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. We'll come back, Mr. Timms.
Yeah, when the report was published, the applicant did contact us on those conditions, and obviously the update explains their position. But I would agree there are differences from the last permission. So I think, I think those conditions should be reinstated or delegated powers for us to explore whether the wording's slightly different to accommodate the points you've made. But yeah, I would say reinstate them and would seek delegated powers to finalise them. Thank you.
You okay with that, Councillor Summerkill?
Yes, I'm very happy with that.
Okay. Councillor Trubinsky.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have to say I totally endorse this application with the current numbers of SEN schools reducing due to the latest raid on VAT. It's nice to see someone expanding, and I can't see any problem with this other than those made by Councillor Summerkill regarding the surface water. So I fully endorse it, and unless anyone else has got any objections, I move that we take it straight to the vote.
Okay, Councillor Trubinsky, I'll take it that's with the reinstatement of condition 5 for delegated powers. Okay.
And my recommended condition at the start, written evidence that they're signed up to the warning system.
I'm quite happy to second from the chair, but does anyone else wish to speak on the item? I think I had Councillor Harwood actually indicated.
Thank you. I've no issue whatsoever with the use and everything else. What I do take issue with a little bit is some of the reassurances from the Environment Agency. I've spent more time up to my middle in floodwater in Yalding than I care to. I mean, I've kind of freshly grown fins, and the reference to, oh, they'll have good warning and so on. Well, the number of times I've stood there up to the rhetorical in water and you get, oh, is it flooding then? I think there is not the degree of sophistication that is perhaps suggested here. I mean, perhaps there's a kind of early warning that something may happen, but then the you know, therefore, I do think we need to think about the emergency plan and the conditioning of the emergency plan for this site as to on what trigger there is an evacuation and so on. So I think we need more surety. An example would be the creche by the River Len at Turkey Court, where because it's a large creche with lots and lots of babies and small children, Maidstone Borough Council required a site emergency plan as to how and where the children would be taken and how they would be taken there. Because I think we do need some surety, because it's not a simple issue. When you're in a flood scenario, you've got areas are cut off, you've got access and egress is impacted, and if you are dealing with young people who require additional support in any evacuation, I think we need some reassurance that that is planned in. The other issue, which also reflects the situation at Turkey Court, the creche, is about reservoir failure safety. We upstream of Yalding and indeed the whole borough, we have a live flood storage reservoir, so that when you have a period of high flows and heavy rainfall, there is impounding of the upstream sections of the River Medway. If there is a failure in that impounding, you can have a lot of floodwater running downhill very quickly. So you're not just dealing with flooding, you're dealing with the velocity of the water as well, because it's from a dam failure. That there is a reservoir inundation emergency plan operating for Kent. And I think this has a bearing on the issue. So I think that emergency plan would also need to address reservoir failure as well, because it's not just an issue of flooding from the river just gradually rising. There could be flood storage failures upstream. And I think because of the vulnerability or the potential vulnerability of the pupils, we just do need to make sure that those issues are tied down. It may be that you need to speak to your emergency planner and potentially Kent County Council's emergency planner as well to do that. It can probably be done under delegated powers, but I would not feel that, that I'd kind of acquitted myself appropriately without just flagging up that we do need to ensure that this is more than getting a text from the Environment Agency. It's a bit more serious than that in this area.
Okay, so just on that then, are you happy for that to be delegated powers, that condition?
Yeah, a delegated powers to talk to the emergency planner at Maidstone Borough Council and within the Kent County Council Resilience and Emergency Planning Service, just to make sure that we are dotting the I's and crossing the T's on the site emergency plan going forward.
Yeah, obviously we'll do that. And I think because they've submitted a draft plan, condition 14 has additional requirements which came from the emergency planners. So what we would do is we would add it to 14 and say we require these additional points to be covered in the eventual plan that was submitted to us. Thank you.
Councillor Summersgill.
Just for information, as the flood warden for adjacent to Yolding, we have looked at the reservoir release flood risk for the whole area of Yolding, Marden and Collier Street, and we don't see it as a sudden event that far down. There's other places in between which catch everything first, so there would be time, but use the experts under delegation to sort that out.
Okay, does anyone else wish to speak on the item? So I'm going to move as per the papers with the item 5 going back to the original conditions and delegating for the officers to reinforce, and item 14 to be reinforced as well. And an extra condition from yourselves for the written evidence of flood wardens. Okay, so, all in favour? It's 11-4. Those against? Those abstaining? Abstain. As approved, as per the papers, the amendments to the conditions. Thank you, members. Thank you. Okay, Richard, we'll review again.
Yep, so this application is a non-material amendment application where the only consideration is whether the proposed changes are materially different or not from what was originally approved. It relates to the permission for 180 apartments at the former Royal Mail sorting office site, and the changes are simply to correct some plan number errors on the approved drawing list and some colour coding errors on the plans. As the corrections would not change the development in any way, it's recommended that this non-material amendment is approved. Thank you.
Councillor Summersgill.
As I member of the Cabinet and discussed this item, I don't feel I should vote on this particular one.
Okay, Councillor Summersgill, noted. Okay. Is that the same for you, Councillor Cox?
You so.
Any other Cabinet members feel the same? It's just, okay, thank you. Okay, in that case, I'm going to propose this from the chair, as per the papers. Thank you, Councillor Trubinski, seconded. All in favour? That's 10-4, and obviously 2 not voting. Okay, as approved as per the papers. Okay, so item 16 is a starred item. Does anyone wish to see us introduced? No? Does that applicant waiver? Sorry? You do? Okay. Sorry, Will?
Thank you. So the application tonight is north of Sutton Valence along Chartway Street. It seeks to erect a new 5-bedroom dwelling. The application is at committee tonight as it seeks to build a new build dwelling in the countryside, and this is a departure from the local plan. So we've got the site location plan here. A satellite photo, it's recent. You see some of the landscaping that's on site, and then the open fields to the south. Proposed elevations, contemporary design with render, there's brick and green wall on the ground floor. Proposed street scene elevation. And the proposed site plan, all the landscaping you see is proposed. So there would be a proposed woodland at the south that would be planted as part of the application. Is the street scene. So the application in this case follows a previous unimplemented approval on site, which also saw a new dwelling from 2021. That's recently expired. Following the adoption of the new local plan review, we have tried to resist some new build dwellings in this location, but we haven't had any success at the appeal stage. So inspectors have recognised that this is a sustainable location for new residential development. So we have no design or amenity objections to the development. I suppose the main issues there would be the removal of these trees ahead to provide the dwelling's access. So on site in total, seven in total, there'll be 17 trees removed, 3 category B trees, which are the ones at the front here, 13 category C trees, and a category U tree, which is the worst condition, would be removed. So we do acknowledge in paragraph 6.14 that the category B trees do have a positive impact on the street scene, whilst 13 category C trees would be removed due to overcrowding and lack of visibility. They are only of limited visual value. So on the basis of the significant landscaping that we planted, lack of significant visual harm, previous appeal decisions in the area, and the tilted balance, we're recommending approval. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Will. Can I have Mr. Day for the applicant, please?
Good evening, members. The application before you seeks full planning permission for the construction of one self-built dwelling at East Wen, Chartway Street. The application follows a previous permission on the site for the same development. The site currently comprises of residential curtilage of East Wen with associated outbuildings, which is within an area of other residential properties north of Sutton Valence. The site, along with a number of other sites in Chartway Street, is considered by the council in other applications to be a sustainable location, given its proximity to Sutton Valence and Maidstone. The design of the proposals have considered the vernacular of the local area and utilises traditional materials with the inclusion of sustainability measures such as solar panels and air source heat pumps to ensure it sits comfortably in the locality and reduces its carbon footprint. The residential amenity of existing and future residents is retained and enhanced, as confirmed by the council, will not cause any harm to the amenity of neighbouring occupiers whilst providing adequate living accommodation for future residents. The application is supported by a suite of the required technical reports, and whilst a self-build application so exempt from BNG, there are a variety of ecological enhancements such as the provision of bird and bat boxes and additional landscaping to the rear of the site. Whilst it is acknowledged that some trees are to be removed to create the access to the site, these will be compensated by the proposed planting of a new woodland area to the south of the application site, which was previously considered acceptable to the council. The key aspects of this planning application can be summarised as follows. The provision of an additional family dwelling to meet the council's housing land supply in the short term. Provision of additional landscaping and other ecological enhancements to boost the biodiversity of the area. Utilising traditional materials sympathetic to the local vernacular. And the provision of a dwelling that is sustainable in terms of design and construction through the installation of air source heat pumps, solar panels, and the use of locally sourced materials. We have welcomed the opportunity to work pragmatically and constructively with officers throughout the application, which has led to the positive recommendation before you today. I respectfully request that you support your officer's recommendation and grant planning permission subject to the conditions proposed. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. I think it's really, really important that we get this right, because if there is a street in the villages in Maidstone, oh, it's Ward Councillor. Yeah.
Councillor Czerwinski, because he's actually, when it's introduced, I just went straight to Councillor Harwood.
Thank you.
Go on. Sorry, Councillor.
Well, I was going to say is I have got nothing.
Councillor Harwood, could you turn your mic off?
I have nothing to say at the moment, but I reserve my rights to come back after Councillor Harwood's spoken. Thank you.
Yeah, as I was saying. I mean, we all know that Chartway Street has changed significantly in that there were lots of small bungalows and now it's become a little bit of a kind of, dare I say it, kind of big gates and kind of mock Georgia block houses and things. And it's not necessarily added to the charm of Chartway Street, let's say. So I think we really do need to think about design and boundary treatments and so on going forward, because I would not want to see a continuation of what we've seen occur in recent years, albeit some of them on appeal, it's got to be said. And I think key to that is the treescape in this area. And you know, we have been told that the trees on the front of the site, we cannot protect them and they will be lost, and it will significantly change the streetscape. So instead of seeing a bank of trees, we're going to be seeing a big new property, which will add to the changes which have been ongoing in recent years. However, to the rear of this site are some very significant trees for the wider landscape, because this site, is pretty much the ridge of the Greensand Ridge. And I'm not entirely sure that the report and the way this has been covered has really conveyed how significant those larger trees to the rear of the property are. And it might be worth putting the aerial photograph on again. Yeah, as you can see, I mean, that's what you've got there now. And there is a proposal, I think, to remove those trees and then put some trees at the end of the garden. And that's quite a big change in terms of streetscape and in terms of longer views of what's going on there. And it seems quite peculiar that the council is just saying that's fine. I really want to understand a little bit about what assessment has been taken on those trees. Was there a tempo assessment for their wider landscape value? And therefore, if we, so one, I want to know kind of how we got to where we are in this proposal. And then if we are going to move from having those big standard trees taken out, and then we are going to put in a block of trees at the end, what is that block of trees going to comprise? I've seen some drawings with some kind of green fuzzy bits on, but I just think, this is a sensitive location and the tree issues need to be properly bottomed out. So perhaps if, kind of officers just can provide some background as to what discussions have taken place with our tree officers and with others, which have allowed this, really fundamental change, which doesn't seem to chime with the usual approach the council takes. And I'm not talking about the frontage, I'm talking to the rear of the site, the ones that are visible on the Greensand Ridge.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Also, the area to the rear that's shown indicative on that plan, have we actually got an area as a condition that area to be planted?
the tree planting would be covered by the condition. I mean, if you want to enhance the condition further or add any additional add additional wording or have something specific in the landscaping condition, which is condition 6, which is perhaps a more general landscaping condition to specifically refer to what you want to see in that wooden planting area or increase the maintenance schedule, and we can do that tonight.
Sorry, William, has a tempo assessment been submitted? Personally, I think that a tempo assessment should be submitted. So, you know, that's to look at the health of the trees and the contribution or the lack of contribution the trees make to both the street scene and the Greensand Ridge landscape. So I propose that this item is deferred until we get such a survey, or I should say assessment.
Yeah, I think Mr. Jarman has put it much better than I did, that we've already got a load of trees there and then we're talking about planting some, but what is the value of the ones that are already there? Can't we work with them rather than plant some more? I think we do need to look at this, and I think the tempo assessment for colleagues is essentially the underpinning for a TPO, really. It's looking at what is the landscape impact of that tree. So I would like to, move that we do defer just to understand the trees behind the site and look at a tempo assessment as to their worth.
Can I just maybe add to that, Councillor? I would actually within the management plan for that bulk of trees we're planning on planting there to replace those quite substantial trees. I don't believe 5 years is enough time for a management plan. I think it should be more looking along the 20-year kind of point, to be honest. And Councillor Thompson, have you got anything to add?
Thank you, Chair. You've anticipated one of the two things I was going to say. The other would be, as per similar cases on previous occasions, can we look at specifying the species list in item 6C on page 54, please?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Howard.
And another one very quickly was there's reference to a preliminary ecological study having been taken and not coming up with anything. I find that very difficult to believe. There's always badgers run over on the road here, and you see, there's a lot of wildlife in this area, and those trees, those big trees in the back garden, they're kind of screaming out bat roost as well. And again, that's another thing about taking down big old trees, is that they're potential habitat in their own right. And I think I would appreciate it if we could have a conversation with KCC Biodiversity about the back garden. Thank you.
Councillor Czubinski.
Yes, I actually agree with Councillor Harwood for a change. So, yes, but I would like to just point out when you look at this particular area, it is of course very close to the Warm Lake Crossroads, and in that area recently there have been 3 new big developments. Well, I say big, 20 houses, and 10 houses. We've just agreed one in a similar location on the other side of the crossroads. So I don't think we're actually in much of a position to refuse this on the basis of what we've done before in that particular area. And indeed, I know that particular plot, and whilst it's got trees in it and things, it kind of doesn't, it's a bit messy as you go towards the crossroads. So I might not be here at the next committee, so I just thought I'd raise those things for people to be aware of next time round if it comes to committee. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Summersgill and Councillor Cox.
Just looking on Google Earth, and of course it may not be current, but the large area at the back has got no trees at all. There's only a couple of trees on what was the boundary between the yellow and the green on the plan. So it's a very large field of which the trees are just around the perimeter. So I'm less inclined to be concerned.
Okay, councillor Cox.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a 5-bedroom house described as a family house in 6.24, 3 parking spaces. Now, my experience, family houses generate children and those children turn 17, 18 and they need more spaces. Are we sure that's enough?
I believe it's from the Kent standard. So they are reaching the Kent standard of 3.
There's nowhere else they can park on the street, so.
I'm not probably the size of the house and the area they've got. If the children do need more parking, I'm probably sure they will build adequate parking to go with it. Councillor Cox. On the application we've got in front of us, we can't assume that the children are going to have cars. We can only assume what's in front of us. We can only decide on what's in front of us, fortunately. So I do get where you're coming from. But they meet the standard. So we have to see whether it's enforceable and fair. And at the moment, because they meet, and within our local plan, we quote the Kent standard, we really can't vote anymore. But it's a good point, and we could put an informative on, which we have done in the past. It has just been brought to my attention, Councillor Harwood, that the decision date was due for this item on the 1st of the 7th. So I know I said I was going to second deferral, but I'm going to probably withdraw that, because if we don't decide tonight, it will probably just go to appeal. And what I'd rather see is we get the assessment, we delegate to the officers to do the assessment, and then from that, do an adequate landscaping plan of 20 years tied into it with the concerns you've raised. I know that's maybe not the way. I'll let you come back.
I mean, that's the way we sometimes do it. We just put delegated powers to look at the trees in the back garden. But what the point is, around the edge of that garden, there's some really big trees. And yet we're proposing basically to remove all of those and then put some trees at the end of the garden. It doesn't sit with me, right, that has been fully thought out in the best way to maintain ecology and landscape, as we have to do as a planning committee. So therefore, I think the officers understand the issue, they understand the site, and they can look at these issues under delegated powers. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the system that applicants can appeal after 8 weeks for non-determination. But I would say 99 times out of 100, if we look at the photograph of the frontage, I think I was there this afternoon. That it's quite striking just how sylvan that site is and the contribution it makes to the street scene. I think the right thing to do is to do an assessment. And yes, you know, I'm not disagreeing with the recommendation, because no doubt the applicant will say, well, you permitted something very similar a few years ago. You know, that's the standard ploy. But I think it's our duty as a planning authority. You know, we value trees, don't we? Particularly when they make an obvious contribution to the street scene. And I just think it's the right thing to do.
Okay. So Councillor Dobbin, did you re-second the deferral, did you? Okay, so we have a motion. Unless we have an amendment. Just to clarify, it is deferral to do the tree assessment, reinforce the management plan to go with it, and then to bring it back to this committee. Okay? So Councillor Harwood is the proposer and Councillor Thompson is the seconder. Okay, hopefully the applicant will work with us and we'll have this back in a couple of months. Okay. Okay, so all in favour of deferral? Eight for deferral. Those against? 4 against. Okay, the item is deferred. Okay, moving on. I call upon the officer to introduce item 20. Done. Does anyone actually want to see us introduced? Because we have no speakers on this item. This is just a quick one. This is the one Bower Place. It's about the tree. Okay. Yes. Unfortunately.
That now clarifies my query from last time.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to start off with saying that since the report has been published, one more neighbor comment has been received that restates the comments previously made on parking. I would refer members to page 113, paragraph 6.37 of the agenda that confirms that the minimum total off-street parking standard for existing and proposed houses is 2 spaces, and the proposal provides over this amount with 3 spaces. This provision of 3 spaces includes demolition of the garage and use of the land as an open air space. We have also received representation from the parish council, which referred to the BNG metric and points out that a tree was present at site which was visible 9 years ago from Google Street View on the corner of the plot. Further to this, aerial images between 2008 and 2018 were surveyed, and it was found that there was a tree on the corner of the site. However, it was removed around 2018, which is earlier than the relevant date for the BNG baseline calculations, which is 30th Jan 2020. To summarize on the application, it was reported to Planning Committee on 19 June 2025, and the committee deferred a decision on this application to seek further clarification regarding the biodiversity net gain assessment to check whether the weeping willow tree shown in earlier images of the site and now removed form part of the baseline metric calculation. Following this, the agent submitted further evidence which confirms that the broadleaf tree was removed from the site. It has also been assessed that this tree is included within the preliminary ecological appraisal, which confirms that the tree has been taken as a whole, that is, an individual urban tree in the calculations. Members may note that the species of the tree is not relevant to the calculations as the units are taken as an individual urban tree. Furthermore, aerial imagery between 2020 and 2025 was assessed and it can be confirmed that no other tree other than the tree included within the BNG calculations was present at site during this period. As a relevant date for which baseline for habitat is accounted for is 30th Jan 2020, it can be confirmed that BNG calculations made are accurate and there is no requirement for a recalculation. This has also been confirmed by the biodiversity officer from KCC. The recommendation is to approve. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Summers.
Yes, thank you for that clarification, which cleared up the confusion I had when looking at it on Google Earth. Satisfied that that was dealt with.
Does anyone else wish to speak on this item? Okay, so I'm going to move as per the papers. Do I have a seconder? Oh, okay. Councillor Thompson down. What change? Well, Councillor Sigurdsson can speak. All in favour? Unanimous. That is approved. Oh. Yes, that's what I was surprised we got through that. Okay, moving on then. Refer to item 13, which is the Planning Committee training report. You will see from the report, I'll let Mr. Timmins introduce it.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just a very short introduction. Yeah, so in summary, for training, the council's constitution requires that firstly, members on committee must undertake training on policies, procedures, legislation and guidance. So a training session is recommended. It's the first mandatory one, and that's to cover any new members or new substitute members, or basically it's potential new members who have never sat on the planning committee before. So that's going to be, I guess, any members who are thinking they may sit on planning committee or may want to be a substitute. Secondly, there's a requirement for training for experienced members when there have been relevant changes to legislation, policies, guidance. As we say in the report, there's frequently changes to those topics. And so the second mandatory training is sort of refresher training to cover that. And basically all current members and substitute members would need to attend that second mandatory session. So for everyone here, it's the second one because you've obviously got experience. And then for any members out there who are thinking of planning committee, they will do both. And then lastly, we've got some discretionary training on some topics that we consider are important. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments on that, councillors? Councillor Gooch.
Are they all at 6 o'clock? I just wanted to know what time they would be. Or have I missed it? Online at 6 o'clock, I guess. Does it say so?
So that's the training times haven't been published. It's likely to be 6 o'clock.
All right, okay. And I'm really glad it's still going out to parish councils. Will they be able to get copies of the presentation? You're looking at me funny. Well, have I asked a really stupid question? Oh, thank you.
The only thing I was going to, oh, sorry, Councillor Spooner, go on, I'll let you go.
Just a question. We are allowed to invite county councillors. Although the county council doesn't have planning responsibilities, can we invite county councillors who represent the Maidstone area?
Why would you want to do that? That would be like...
Why would I tell you? Just a question. Just a question.
From a very personal point of view, it doesn't make any difference to me if it's 10 people or 100. It's the same presentation.
Because I think some of them could do with some training. I don't know where else they're going to get it from.
Is that a proposal to reform the planning training?
What concerns me?
While I see maybe the merit in it, what I wouldn't want to do is obviously us advise those members that have had some training, quote it, and then be against KCC have advised. So I would say that KCC, if they wish to contribute to the training and obviously pay for somebody after the time to cover those members to come in, then maybe there's a discussion to be had. But to be honest, I think it'll be more disruptive than it will be beneficial to go with it. I was also going to suggest that we do a site visit that we've done in the past, where we've gone out and we've looked at good developments and not so good developments. Basically, so that we can actually see what we're actually agreeing on and actually put it into practice actually, and see some of the positives. And I know previous when I've been on a few, when we went to Lewisham, wasn't it? And when we went to Lewisham, didn't we? No, but we actually went to see a positive development up there, didn't we?
Around to Kidbrooke.
Kidbrooke, sorry. So, and it was a...
Where the old hospital.
Yes. So, sorry. Councillor Cox didn't, and I'll come back to you, Councillor Cleater.
Just a request, and maybe this won't work for how you put the materials together. Is there any way the heritage one could be moved up ahead of ideally the landscape one? Only because I know there are a number of conservation area assessments going on, and for the parish councillors that are involved in it, I think that would be really useful. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll swap the January 2026 heritage one with the November 2025. Is that agreed, members? And agreed to the site visit?
Can I just make a comment on that? The last site visit I went on, we ended up getting chased by that woman in Bearsted who was shouting at us to get off her street. And who were you? So if we're going to do a site visit, can we do it on a friendly site, please? Not where some mad woman's going to come out the house shouting at us. And please don't mention Lewisham, because it sets a hair running on social media in Maidstone.
Okay. There are other boroughs, obviously, where we can go look at. Good. So it's a planning tour, and we would define where to go within that tour. Okay. Any other questions? No. Okay. So as we've amended it, I believe it's option 2, isn't it? Yeah. So we. So, okay, so we're agreeing that the training program is agreed, but we're swapping around the dates and adding a site visit. Okay, all in favour? That's agreed. Unanimous. Okay, moving on then to the appeals list. So, yeah, Mr. Jarman.
No specific comments, Chairman. No, I'm going to contradict myself. I was particularly pleased to see the dismissed appeal at land south of Howland Road. But that was a very good decision. Well, I would do, wouldn't I, because it was dismissed.
Any questions for Mr. Jarman? No? Okay. Moving on then, I believe we are finished and I'll draw the meeting to a close. Thank you, councillors. Thank you, officers.